fact check me, so I'd fact check myself.
Well, you're kidding me. Vince, what are you doing? What are you doing?
No, Vince.
What are you doing? How am I supposed to fact check an article about you?
Because you know this stuff better than I do.
That's not true. It's your life.
Exactly my point.
I don't know your life better than you know your life.
I don't know my life either.
Then what are you asking me for?
Because you have experience in broadcast and writing.
That doesn't mean that I wrote the piece and I'm not writing the piece. It's not my
But
byline.
I needed a third pair of eyes.
All right. Well, you know
Not
what?
like
Broadcast.
A fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, an eighth.
Well, you know what? Broadcast writing is like TV stuff. I can't like print write.
But you could do anything.
You know what we can do?
What can we do?
This is SportsZone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of SportsZone. We are kicking it off with the important stuff as we always do. I'm joined by Jessica and Aaron, so you know what that means. It's time for Studio 90. After the Thanksgiving break, we will sort of touch on the big story of the weekend. Barcelona and Valencia playing in La Liga, number 1 against number 2 in the league, playing to a 1-1 draw, but sort of a lot more drama in the game than that. Jessica, some calls that maybe Lionel Messi should have had a goal that crossed the line but wasn't called by the official, some calls for goal line technology, so a lot of overarching stories to pull away from this game. Do you think there should be goal line technology? Other big leagues like Germany and England have sort of implemented this. Do you think this game is good evidence that La Liga should do that as well?
Yeah, definitely, especially, considering that goal would have given Barcelona the win. To be fair, though, they didn't really play that well during the game. I feel like Valencia really came out in the second half. But nonetheless, there definitely should be goal line technology in La Liga.
And sort of sticking with that, Aaron, do you think this game, Valencia, people were wondering at second place if they were really a contender or someone that people should be taken seriously in that chase for the La Liga title. Do you think this game reinforces Valencia as serious contenders?
I definitely think this game proved that Valencia are able to compete with the likes of Barcelona. They're ahead of Real Madrid right now. They played really well in this game, They played well defensively. They had a good amount of possession, which versus Barcelona was very impressive. So definitely Valencia played well in this game. Maybe should have lost because of that Messi disallowed goal, but nonetheless, I think they deserved a draw.
And Valencia won't have any European soccer to worry about, which their counterparts, Barcelona, even Real Madrid, have to worry about. And we've seen in the past, even last year with Chelsea, Antonio Conte not having to worry about European soccer so much, and they were able to have success. A couple years ago, Leicester City sort of in a similar situation, not having to worry about European soccer, and were able to kick on and focus all on the league. So something interesting to follow there, and always exciting when you have a new team sort of competing for the glory in their league. And sort of touching on their lack of European competition to the European competition that's going on now, Champions League matches were played over this last week, setting up for a somewhat tepid, maybe looking final day of the group stage, but I think the big one, Atletico Madrid, staying with the theme of La Liga teams, was able to keep their Champions League season alive with a 2-0 victory against Roma. Jessica, with everything to play against Chelsea, needing a victory to move on, Chelsea already having advanced to the knockout stages, do you think Atletico Madrid will be able to carry some of that momentum and advance to the knockout stages?
Definitely, and especially, their defense has been really great this season, and I think that they have a really good chance of advancing.
And another big story is we sort of have a general idea of teams that are going to advance. I think we'll touch on a team that has had a historic group stage, that's PSG. They're sitting with a goal difference of 23 through 5 games in the group stage, scoring 7 goals against Celtic in the last match day. Aaron, with the addition of Kylian Mbappe and Neymar, PSG's fallen short numerous times in the past. Do you think PSG is a serious contender for the Champions League title this year?
They're definitely a serious contender for the Champions League this year. I mean, you look at Neymar. He's playing pretty well in Ligue 1 right now, but you can tell that he really shows up for those Champions League matches. He had 2 goals and 1 assist in the last one, and he's just been playing unbelievably. And when you have that amount of attacking talent, when you have Mbappe, when you have Neymar, when you have Cavani, when you have Di Maria, all of these guys, you're always going to have a chance to advance far. And I definitely think they're a contender to win the Champions League.
Finally, it seems, after years of just throwing money at players, the oil sheiks in Paris have finally got it right and got a lineup that can sort of compete and maybe make amends after last year's shocking collapse against Barcelona in the knockout stages. But we'll sort of pivot from the Champions League to the Premier League, where we have a team that is continuing its red-hot start to the season. Manchester City was victorious again this season, or victorious again this weekend, and sort of capitalizing as other teams in the top four dropping points. Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham all dropping points. Manchester United and Arsenal not necessarily looking convincing in their victories. Jessica, we sort of talked about this before the segment, but Manchester City has a run of easy games ahead of them. Do you think that they can sort of widen this gap and put the title race out of reach before we even reach New Year's?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the most difficult games I see them having are United and Tottenham, which have both, been doing pretty well so far. Especially United, Pogba came back. I think that if City keeps this momentum up, though, they can definitely win the league.
And United being, at the moment, Manchester City's closest competitors, they struggled needing an own goal to beat Brighton and Hove this weekend. Aaron, do you think, with United having a couple of big games this week, including a game against Arsenal, do you think Man United will be able to keep pace with City, who sort of has these easier fixtures on their side?
I definitely think it will be tough for United to keep pace with City, especially the fact that City have looked so good. They've looked on a different level than everybody else, and United have, even though they've been winning games, they've been looking very unconvincing. They lost midweek in the Champions League, but they squeaked out a 1-0 win this weekend on that own goal, like you said. But they didn't really create that many chances, didn't look too well. So I don't really see them, tightening up that gap between Man City just because City have been playing on a different level than they have.
Something, though, to keep the optimism for those teams chasing. Manchester City had about this sizable lead at this point in the season last year before Chelsea sort of went on their run and was able to supplant them. However, Manchester City wasn't undefeated and playing the scintillating football that they're playing right now. So maybe a case of comparing apples to oranges, but for the optimists out there, there is still some hope. And we will finally transition from England back stateside, the MLS Cup. This week we will have the second legs of the conference finals. Columbus and Toronto, currently their tie is 0-0. In an action-packed first leg, Aaron, where Columbus wasn't necessarily able to take advantage of the fact that Josie Altidore and Sebastian Giovinco were out suspended for that game. Do you think, as now we go back to Toronto getting their two star players back, do you think Toronto will be able to put Columbus to the sword?
Yeah, sadly, I think that Columbus sort of lost their chance to get ahead in that tie. They played really well in the game. They had so many opportunities, but they just weren't able to finish it. And it was tough watching, rooting for Columbus just because, they were playing well, they were creating chances, but they weren't able to score. And with especially Sebastian Giovinco coming back, it's going to be tough for them playing away from home to win this game. So I definitely see Toronto advancing to MLS Cup again.
And finally, touching on the Western Conference Finals, Seattle was able to get 2 away goals against the Houston Dynamo. Now they're coming back to their fortress in Seattle. They are the reigning MLS champions. Jessica, just quickly, do you think there's any reason why Seattle won't be in the MLS Cup again this year?
I mean, definitely not. Those 2 away goals are especially helpful considering they're going to play at home, and they're a lot stronger there, so I definitely don't see Houston coming out with a win at all.
And certainly we will keep up to date with those MLS matchups. We'll keep pace with the English Premier League, and we'll update all those next week. That is all the time we have for this edition of Studio 90, but stick around for more SportsZone after this.
Hello, welcome back to SportsZone. This is our premier NFL segment, Going for Two. I'm back, once again, joined alongside Vince Salandro. Vince, we can get back to hard-hitting analysis. We had Thanksgiving week in football, Turkey Day, and football. Seems like a great combination, like peanut butter and jelly. But the Thanksgiving game's very unamusing, to say the least. Starting off at 1 o'clock, you had the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Detroit Lions in an NFC North battle, with the Minnesota Vikings picking up a 30-23 win. And then you swing down south to Dallas. Dallas suffering another crushing loss without Zeke at home. And then the Giants and Redskins in D.C. in by far one of the biggest waste of primetime air out there. Vince, what happened across the board on Thanksgiving that made football, I guess, not as special?
Well, I think when you looked at the games go again, there was sort of a belief that the games weren't going to be very good. On paper, it looked like the Minnesota-Detroit game was the best one. And for 3.5 quarters, it was. Detroit was able to mount a comeback there, coming back from 17. It looked like they were on the brink, but Matthew Stafford throws a late interception, and that sort of takes the sting out of that game. But Dallas playing on Thanksgiving Day is a tradition, but they're not very good this year, so we kind of knew going in that the game wasn't going to be very good. It turned out to be a coming out party. Phillip Rivers throwing for over 400 yards, and the resurgent LA Chargers are sort of now they're putting themselves in contention in that AFC West out there. Wow, this was sort of a make or break for Dallas in terms of their season. They needed to win this to sort of salvage some momentum and maybe keep hopes alive for a wild card, but they just are sputtering. Dak Prescott is really struggling without Ezekiel Elliott, and they're just sort of floundering. And as far as the Sunday night game goes, two teams with no offensive line, and really, in the Giants' case, no skill position players whatsoever. There was no promise that that game even was going to be good, but even despite the result and despite the boring result, the Washington Redskins are keeping the boat afloat in terms of their playoff hopes, just marginally. I mean, but you got to feel a little bit for the New York Giants. Eli Manning's being protected by 5 cardboard boxes, basically, and throwing to small children out there. The Giants are just a really bad team, and they shouldn't be on prime time.
Well, swinging to the Redskins, who keeping the boat afloat, and then their currently division leader and NFL's leading Philadelphia Eagles, the 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the first team to reach 10 wins this season. Another win for them, 31-3 at home over the Chicago Bears, who are, I guess, somewhat of a floundering team. And the Eagles with some interesting celebrations, bowling on offense, and on the defensive side on turnovers, doing the electric slide, which if you ask Malcolm Jenkins, it was, something that the old guys could understand. Vince, why are the Eagles still so hot now?
Well, I think they've got a red-hot quarterback. The trade for Jay Ajayi really kind of complements Garrett Blount, who was already having a pretty good year. So they have dual threat at that running back position. Nelson Aguilar and the addition of Alshon Jeffrey is really creating a formidable force for them on offense. And their defense is just locking teams down, forcing turnovers. You saw they didn't even play a perfect game on offense. Garrett Blount fumbling the ball twice for the Eagles there, and they still were able to win by a 28-point margin of victory. They just are clicking all cylinders, and when you're playing that well, you might as well celebrate and have fun because enjoy the good times.
Turning over to a team a little bit more out west that's not playing as well, seems to be even possibly giving away their division, letting it slip to the LA Chargers. The Kansas City Chiefs lost to Buffalo at home in Arrowhead and only scored 10 points in a 16-10 loss for the Buffalo Bills. Tyrod Taylor back in the lineup. Vince, what was Tyrod Taylor's impact on the Bills?
I don't know if you can necessarily say. I think this was the right decision, and him being benched last week was just a travesty and a lapse in coaching decisions, because the Buffalo Bills, based on how poor the AFC is right now, are still in contention for a wild card spot. So it's completely just. It's really kind of hard to comprehend why he was benched. He didn't even play that well on Sunday, but he's certainly a better option than Nathan Peterson, and he gives them the best chance to win. As for the Chiefs, a really floundering team. They were, it seems kind of funny for us to say now that they were the last undefeated team, and they were the team to beat after beating the Eagles and the Patriots in the 2 opening weeks of the season. But now Alex Smith has sort of returned to that game manager Alex Smith, lacking that explosiveness, and you hard to attribute the demise of their defense to the injury of Eric Berry, but it really does seem once he got hurt, they've really regressed. And with the LA Chargers and the Oakland Raiders breathing down their neck, that division's getting a lot more exciting now.
Speaking of the Oakland Raiders, another interesting moment between Oakland Raiders wide receiver Michael Crabtree and Denver Broncos cornerback Aqib Talib. Once again, the two exchanging blows in Oakland. Vince, is the league going to issue any sanctions here, and should they? Or is this just going to be an occurrence that continuously happens when these two guys take the field?
I think they have to. If they suspended Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Green for a much, as we can sort of say objectively, a much less bigger scale fight for earlier in the season, the NFL would seem sort of hypocritical to not at least levy at least a 1-game suspension for these guys. I mean, they were throwing punches, benches were clearing. Michael Crabtree came back for a second bite of the cherry, and these two have a history with each other. Week 17 last year, they got into it. Ripping necklaces off each other's necks, and then basically the first drive going at it. I think the NFL at least needs to levy a 1-game suspension on these guys. Need to have a big fine, I think the announcers of the game said it best. Both of those guys acting extremely selfishly, not thinking of the team. And I think the NFL really does need to step in and discipline them because it's not a good look for the league.
And while both of those teams obviously having physical altercations, kind of going a little bit farther out west to two teams that were playing some of their best football. You had the LA Rams taking on the red-hot New Orleans Saints. The Rams coming out with another victory. Are the Rams legit after now ending an 8-game winning streak from New Orleans?
I think definitely. Last week after their loss to Minnesota, you sort of questioned whether LA had sort of profited from a pretty weak schedule, but I think they answered all questions this week, beating a New Orleans team who was the league's hottest team, and they sort of have supplanted themselves. They've established a big lead out, or a 2-game lead out there on the Seattle Seahawks, who lost last Monday night. And so I think they are for real. It's sort of a changing of the guard in the NFL when seeing teams like the Saints, the Rams, and the Minnesota Vikings, and the Philadelphia Eagles, for that matter, on the top of the league.
Yeah, with Week 11 now wrapping up, Week 12 fast approaching. Vince, take us through it. Matchup of the week.
Matchup of the week, 1 o'clock game. Team we just talked about, Minnesota Vikings are going to play the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are resurging. Julio Jones had a big game this past week. Both of those teams duking it out, and the Atlanta Falcons need to sort of keep pace with the New Orleans Saints there in that division.
Yeah, I have to go with the 4:25 matchup, America's game of the week, if you will. The New Orleans Saints hosting the Carolina Panthers in the battle for what seems to be the most contested division this year, the NFC South. The Saints coming off of a loss in LA, and the Panthers coming off of a fairly close and a little nerve-wracking win for Panthers fans in MetLife Stadium against the New York Jets. But it'll be very interesting to see how both teams react. You've got Cam Newton, Drew Brees matching up once again. This time, major playoff implications are on the line. But anyway, that's all the time we have for this segment of Going for Two. More Sports Zone coming to you after this. Hello, welcome back to Sports Zone. This is the college football segment. I'm joined alongside, once again, Vince Salandro, David Mandelberg. Let's kick it off. Let's touch it down. The biggest, by far, upset of the season, I guess not in the most surprising of games, per se, but the Iron Bowl completely shakes up the top 4 and shakes up college football playoffs. You have Auburn taking down Alabama in Birmingham. Vince, what happened on Saturday night?
I think you just saw Auburn put in a solid defensive performance. They really contained Jalen Hurts, Bo Scarborough, Calvin Ridley, the offensive players for Alabama, and they were just able to capitalize on some mistakes and really put their foot on the throat of Alabama. They needed this game to keep their hopes alive, to play their way into the playoff, because now they have wins over 2 number 1 teams this season. They have a chance to knock off Georgia in that SEC title game and send themselves to the playoffs and be the first 2-loss team to ever make the college football playoff. But I think you just saw a hungry team. They were playing at home. The crowd was really rabid and raucous there. They were ready to go, and I think Alabama was a little bit shell-shocked. They weren't ready for it.
Yeah, interesting to see how that happened. Again, Auburn winning 2 of the last 3 Iron Bowls. Everybody can remember 3 years ago, the big kickoff return for a touchdown at the end of the game that cemented Auburn with another Iron Bowl win. But swinging to another rivalry matchup, which completely busted everybody's predictions. At a top 4, Miami on Friday night lost to Pitt in Pittsburgh, 24-14. David, what happened in Pittsburgh?
Honestly, I think Miami just got lazy. I mean, this is an easily defeatable team. It's a trap game, and they just couldn't convert. They couldn't push forward, and I don't think it's going to cost them a playoff spot, but that's just got to be a ginormous hit for that Miami squad right now.
So with a lot of teams projected to kind of finish where we thought they were, but now with these last 2 weeks, or this last 2 matchups, lots of shakeup. Going into championship week this week, so we got some interesting matchups. In the Big 12, you have Oklahoma taking on TCU. Baker Mayfield and his eccentric personality will be taking on the Horned Frogs. David, who do you see coming out with the first ever Big 12 title?
I'm going with Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma. I mean, they've been on a roll. Baker Mayfield's just keep proving his critics wrong, and I think they're just going to keep rolling through their competition.
Do you also, quick follow-up, do you think a Big 12 team, if like an Oklahoma wins this matchup, do you think they find their way into the top 4?
Honestly, I do, considering all the hype around them. Literally, college football loves seeing the hype, and I think this could push them into that college playoff spot.
Swinging into a little bit more of a power conference, I guess a little bit better history in the college football playoffs. You got the Big Ten. You have Wisconsin taking on Ohio State. Ohio State, a 2-loss team, going up against an undefeated Wisconsin. Vince, who comes out on top?
I think it all is contingent on if JT Barrett is healthy and able to play. We saw last week in the game against Michigan, he ran into a cameraman, hurt his knee a little bit. If he's not 100%, I don't think Ohio State will be able to pull it off. And also, I think, interestingly, if Wisconsin is able to win that game, even as an undefeated team, I think they'll have to sweat it out. I don't think their victory in the Big Ten title game necessarily guarantees them a spot in that playoff. However, I think if Ohio State does win, even though they are a two-loss team, we know the committee looks at Ohio State favorably. We've seen that the past couple years. I think if Ohio State is able to win this game and with a comfortable margin of victory, they will be able to find their way into that college football playoff.
Yeah, very interesting take there. Even though Wisconsin could, if they do finish 13-0 with this win, who knows if they'll still make it? They should, in my personal opinion, being the only real undefeated team that's even looked at the top 5 this season. But it'll be very interesting to see what the selection committee decides. Going down south to, I guess, the matchup that nobody predicted, you have the Auburn Tigers taking on the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC title game, brand new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. David, who comes out on top in the SEC?
We'll roll with Auburn. They proved it against Georgia once this season. I think they're going to do it again. I think them being Bama really showed off that they're a team that could pull off the unbelievable. I just got to go with them like a hot hand.
Yeah, there's one more big matchup that could determine more playoff implications. The ACC title game, which features one-loss Miami against one-loss defending national champion Clemson. Vince, who comes out on top?
I think you got to go with Kelly Bryant and Dabo Swinney and Clemson. I think Miami's going to come in licking their wounds a little bit from that loss to Pittsburgh. I think they got caught, as David sort of talked about, a trap game, looking ahead to that ACC title game, and now I think they're going to suffer the consequences of that. Kelly Bryant and Clemson, they've been playing relatively well. They're coming in hot. They absolutely demolished their rival, South Carolina, this weekend. And I think, victory in that game puts Clemson possibly as the number 1 team heading into the college football playoff and really sinks Miami's hopes of making the playoff at all.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. Now, a little bit of bracketology time, which I know is normally not reserved for college football, but how has been in the last couple of years. This, by far, is going to be the most unpredictable playoff scenario that could occur. Especially with Alabama and Miami both losing this week. So going into conference title week, the college football playoff rankings coming out tomorrow. David, who's your top 4?
That's a really tough decision, with Alabama, you mentioned Alabama and Miami losing. Do you put Auburn up there? Because they've been pretty good so recently. Honestly, my listing would be probably Auburn, Oklahoma, Alabama, and then, I don't know for the 4th. There could be so many contenders for that spot.
Very interesting. They're keeping 2 SEC teams and one of them not even being in the SEC title game. But as we've seen in the past with Ohio State and Penn State, even just last year, that it doesn't necessarily matter if you win your conference title game because it all depends on what team, and what school you necessarily are. But Vince, top 4, who do you got?
I think Clemson, after this week of events, they'll sit at the number 1 team in this rankings. I think Oklahoma will slide in number 2. I think number 3 is where it'll get interesting. I think Auburn's win in the Iron Bowl vaults them up to number 3. I think at number 4, you could make an argument that Wisconsin could slide up there. I think the committee doesn't look at their strength of schedule very favorably, and I think they'll remain at number 5. I think Alabama, even despite the loss, they'll drop from 1 to 4, and this is all tentative. I think this is heading into championship week, and those could shake out. I don't see both Auburn and Alabama making it into the college football playoff in the final rankings, but I think this week that's how it'll sit.
Yeah, if I had to pick it, I would go Clemson number 1, the defending national champions. They had one little slip up in the beginning of the season, but that one loss, they've really come on strong since. Number 2, you got to go Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield, even though he's a little bit of an eccentric personality. It'll be very interesting to see, but they've also had difficulty with TCU in the past, so it'll be very interesting to see whether or not they even come out on top in their matchup. At number 3, you got to go Auburn. As much as they are a 2-loss team, they have beaten Georgia and Alabama, both number 1 teams at the time, so they're 2 losses, they might be a 2-loss team, but they have beaten 2 of the best teams in the country. Number 4, as much as everybody seems to knock them, I got to go Wisconsin. I just don't see how you can put two non-undefeated teams in from the same conference, especially when one is not even going to be in their conference title game. As much as the committee might not value the conference title game, I personally think that they should value the conference title game. That is a big honor, and it normally affects teams if they lose their game when they should win. So I think you got to stick with Wisconsin. And if they do win against Ohio State, that definitely cements them in the top 4 because Ohio State, as we've all just said on this segment, that the committee looks upon them favorably. So a Wisconsin win definitely at least locks them up the Big Ten spot in the top 4. But anyway, that's all the time we have for this edition of the college football segment. More Sports Zone coming to you after this.
And welcome back to Sports Zone. This is our NBA segment, Throwing It Up. I'm joined here by Daniel. So we'll start off. The news just broke. The Memphis Grizzlies just fired their head coach, David Fizdale, after an 8-game losing streak. So Daniel, what are your initial reactions to the firing?
So I think a big reason why they fired the coach is because the players on the team and Fizdale didn't see eye to eye. For example, just last game, Marc Gasol was benched the whole entire fourth quarter, and he was pretty upset about that, as he's the franchise player. And aside from that, I think Memphis's management was actually responsible for the firing. A lot of times you hear star players complaining to the management about a coach, but from what I learned, it was the management that made the decision to fire him, especially because they're on an 8-game losing streak and might not make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, definitely a good point made there about Marc Gasol, who's the franchise player and who got benched in that fourth quarter. But a lot of people were surprised by the firing because Fizdale had done a good job in the past with the Grizzlies, but definitely a turning of the page for that franchise. Moving on to a marquee matchup on Friday night that featured the Golden State Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder ended up winning the game, but the main story from the game was was a little fight between Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, which had a lot of people talking. Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook obviously have had a public fight, going on for a year. So, Daniel, I just want to know, what did you make of the sort of get together between the two?
Well, it's funny because whenever they have interviews between Durant and Westbrook talking about each other, they sort of try to push it off and say that, oh, no, it's no big deal. But clearly there's some tension between the players still, and they have not made up since Durant has left OKC 2 summers ago. And the Thunder ended up winning that game, so possibly maybe that could boost the Thunder and to start winning games and get a good seed for the playoffs.
Yeah, the Thunder have definitely been struggling lately, so maybe this Warriors win could be the sort of catalyst to more wins coming up in the future. But definitely a team that's doing well right now in the Western Conference is the Houston Rockets. They're 15-4 right now. A lot of people sort of question whether Chris Paul could come back into the fray and they could keep winning, but he has come back and they're still winning. So, Daniel, what's been the key to the Rockets' success this season so far?
I think the James Harden, Clint Capella pick and roll is phenomenal. I think it's one of the best pick and roll tandems in the league right now. Capella's a big body who can catch lobs and throw it down, and also create lanes for James Harden to get through. He finishes pretty well with both hands, and he obviously has a tough handle to guard when big men switch on to him. So that's actually what's helping the team win games. All the switches and the pick and rolls are critical. Eric Gordon's scoring has also helped the team a lot this year. He's been phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely when you've got two guys of the caliber of Chris Paul and James Harden is always going to help your team win. And like you said, that pick and roll has been lethal this season. Another team that's surprised in the Western Conference is the San Antonio Spurs, who have been without their star player Kawhi Leonard this season. He's been out with an injury, but they've still been able to succeed. They're third in the Western Conference right now, a stacked Western Conference. So Daniel, how have they been able to succeed without that star player in Kawhi Leonard?
Honestly, it's Popovich. He's a brilliant coach, arguably the best of all time, honestly. You've got a depleted roster because, take in mind, they're also missing their starting point guard, Tony Parker. And although Marcus Aldridge has stepped up, he received a ton of criticism over the playoffs for not stepping up when Kawhi was injured. But this season, he's been playing very well and playing like he was in Portland when he was an all-star. Also, back to Popovich's system, he just outsmarts other coaches and knows how to win games even with a limited roster. and maybe when Kawhi can get healthy, they can make a run for the number 1 seed in the Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about Popovich, who's been an unbelievable coach for the past decade in the NBA. And another great story is LaMarcus Aldridge, a guy who was really criticized in the playoffs for not playing well. And a lot of people question the Spurs giving him a big extension this summer, but that seemed to pan out for them. He's playing really well so far this season. But moving on to the Eastern Conference, we talked about on the last show the Cleveland Cavaliers' struggles. They had been struggling, but now they're starting to go on a little run. They've reeled off a good winning streak, and now they're up to third in the Eastern Conference. So, Daniel, what has really changed for the Cleveland Cavaliers, do you think, from this run that they've had the past week or so?
So LeBron is obviously still great. He has been playing phenomenally in the fourth quarter, helping them win a lot of close games. Not only that, but Dwayne Wade has been really good playing for the second unit the past 5 or 6 games. He's actually been one of the primary ball handlers in the second unit, and he's a big reason for their recent success. Aside from that, Derrick Rose obviously has had an absence from the team and is questioning retirement. But at this point, it actually might look like a great career might come to a close. Obviously, the injuries have had a toll on his mental and physical makeup. And going forward, he might not be that needed for the team once Isaiah Thomas comes back. And now that Dwayne Wade is really comfortable handling the ball in the second unit. But we'll just have to wait and see for what happens with Derrick Rose.
Yeah, you talk about Derrick Rose, a guy who's had so many injuries the past few years, and it's going to be very sad to see him not in the league. But that's all we have for Throwing It Up right now, and more Sports Zone after this.
Hello, welcome back to Sports Zone. This is AU Insiders, our AU Athletics segment where we follow the Eagles throughout their seasons, joined alongside once again by Vince Salandro. Vince, so let's talk about the dominant team, the AU women's volleyball team. Selection show was Sunday evening. They found out they will be going to Provo to play the 13th seeded BYU. Vince, take us through, what do you think, what are your expectations for this matchup?
I think the Eagles benefit this year. They get a lower seeded team than they did last year. Last year they drew the 5th seeded Michigan Wolverines and really were overmatched in that game by a Big Ten opponent. I think they get a little bit of a disservice having to go all the way out west. Not something that they've done at all this season. They've stuck mainly on the East Coast in their travel, so that may be something that the ladies have to adjust to, the jet lag and all those sorts of things. But I think, BYU also not coming from a power conference could play in their favor, but BYU, a strong team, has 2 losses all season. They likely will be a formidable opponent for the Eagles, but AU coming in 18-game winning streak, and they really were strong in their last 2 games of the season against against Lehigh and Navy in the Patriot League tournament. 2 teams who gave them some struggles during the regular season, but they smoked them out of the gym. 3-set victories in both of those games. They are coming on really strong and led by Alexandra Cazalo, who is in the top 10 in the nation in kills per set, points per set, total kills. She's just really leading the team. They've got, Kennedy Etheridge playing well. She was named to the second team All-League. Kirsten Largay defensively has been really sound for them, the libero of the year in the league. Vela McBride and Cheyenne Orsi have been really strong, coming together, working as a tandem at the middle block. So I think the pieces are there for the Eagles to possibly spring an upset. They've done it in the past, and they're a young team that has NCAA experience, but I think, the cards may be stacked a little bit against them.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how they handle in Provo. December 1st at 9 p.m. is their tip-off, I guess, if that's what you call it in volleyball. But speaking to sports that do have tip-offs, you have the women's basketball and men's basketball team both in action this weekend. The women traveled to Burlington, Vermont to go to the Vermont Showcase, where they split 1-1 with a big kind of come-from-behind win against the University of Vermont and a very close loss against Villanova. Vince, I know the women's team is only 3-3 this year, but they have beaten some very good teams. What are your expectations for the women's team as we slowly start to make our way into Patriot League play?
I think even heading into the season, there was an expectation that the women could perform pretty well this season. They only lost they lost 2 seniors, but only one, Lauren Chrysler, who played significant minutes for the Eagles last year. They will return their top line, Emily Kinniston, Maria Ledane, Cecily Carl, Michael Harris, who really came on and sort of suggested towards the end of the season when Cecily Carl was hurt, playing alongside Lauren Chrysler, that she could potentially replace Lauren Chrysler when Carl is healthy again. So they have all the pieces there. They have a couple of freshmen who are playing pretty well for them, and they can score the basketball. And they've shown, in their 2 early losses in the season against George Mason and in their other loss, they started well but sort of feathered off in the fourth quarter, but they were able to react for that quickly, because against Vermont, outscoring Vermont by 16 points in the fourth quarter to rally for a victory there, sort of learning from their early season mistakes. I think it is early and they still have a lot of their non-conference slate to continue, but they're playing well right now, and I think it sets up well for the Patriot League for them.
Yeah, right now, Coach Megan Jebbia really running as a fairly deep bench. You're looking at freshman Maddie Royal, who's getting a lot of playing time as one of the big women down in the post. You also have the return of Takenya Cleveland after her being injured all of last season, who's been a nice supplement to Cecily Carl and Michael Harris down low in the post. Great ball movement. And you, of course, have had the great guard play. You have Emily Kinniston, Maria Ledame, Alina Koskimius. A lot of strong girls coming back for the Eagles. Should be a very interesting and strong season. Swinging to the other side of the floor, I guess, if you will, the men are on a 2-game winning streak. They're beating UNH and VMI at home over the weekend. Vince, a lot of interesting, I guess, play going on for the men. Saeed Nelson, obviously the go-to guy, but also you're kind of seeing the emergence of Larry Matuzis. Vince, is this a duo that could possibly be the juggernaut for the Eagles offense?
I think so. I think this is something that maybe we expected last year with Saeed Nelson and Delonte Jones, but I think Larry Matuzis sort of complements Saeed Nelson a little bit more. He's not so much a guy who needs to create his own shot. He's a guy who can get set shots, and sort of Saeed Nelson driving and sort of kicking out to him. He's a solid 3-point shooter, as he's shown. He's sort of added some dynamics to his game, driving to the hoop as well. I think they complement each other nicely, and they've shown that. Matuzis has scored over 20 points, I believe, 3 times already this season, showing he can be a scorer to complement Saeed Nelson, because there was a lot of question marks with this team, with a lot of new players who would sort of step up as that second scorer. And I think something interesting to note for this men's basketball team is they're doing this all without Mark Gasparini. He hasn't played at all in the first 5 games. So these freshmen are sort of starting to have to establish themselves. They're playing a lot of undersized guys in the post and faring fairly well. When you take away those 2 games against West Virginia and Kansas State, a 1-point loss to Wagner is the only thing separating this Eagles team from a winning record right now. You're seeing guys like Sam Arroyo, Jesse Little are playing pretty well when they're able to stay out of foul trouble, and I think the men's basketball team really exceeding reasonable expectations this early in the season.
Yeah, still a lot of big matchups for them. Maryland, Eastern Shore, Western Illinois, and then you also have the big matchup at home, their next home matchup against Howard University. Should be a very interesting matchup to see how they shake out against starting to see even more real competition on top of just the 2 teams they opened the season with. But anyway, that's all the time we have for this edition of AU Insiders. More SportsZone coming to you after this. Hello, welcome back to SportsZone. This is everybody's favorite segment. Yes, Aviva, everybody's favorite segment wherever you are. Thumble, thumbs up, thumbs down, where we talk about the good, the bad, and sometimes ugly in the world of sports and the world at large. I am back once again leading it off in the lineup here for SportsZone with thumbs. So I'm going to start thumbs up to the New York Rangers. Big wins over the weekend. Detroit, there was a big win at home. Matt Zuccarello with the overtime winner. It was great to see. Also, thumbs up to Cornell taking red hot hockey by storm at the Garden. Always nice to see Madison Square Garden get packed for a college hockey game, even though it doesn't happen often. Thumbs up to Princeton men's hockey. A couple big wins against Bemidji State. We're finally turning it around. Yes, I'm from Princeton. Yes, I'm an avid Princeton hockey fan. We all have our obscure sports that I wouldn't even call it obscure. We all have our obscure fandoms. So I guess that's mine, if you will. I'll go thumbs middle, the New York Jets. I mean, we lost to a team we weren't supposed to beat, but we held our own 35-27 against the Panthers. I mean, Panthers are still a perennial NFC contender. They're currently tied for the lead in the NFC South. So should be interesting. Thumbs up to the AU men's basketball team for picking up a big home opening win in front of past president Neil Kerwin and current president Sylvia Burwell. Yeah, it was a once an Eagle, always an Eagle fan fest in Bender Arena. They should have been giving out Kerwin bobbleheads since Neil Kerwin was there. So props to that. Also, a lot of big names there: David Aldridge, Al Koken. The list goes on. It was quite a fun time on Saturday in Bender Arena, even though we still don't have a large fan base. But that's neither here nor there. Thumbs down to Jake Elmsley because he sucks. I'm back. I can finally say it. Aaron, thumbs up. Triple thumbs up to Aaron for filling right in, taking that spot and running with it. We're not missing a week here. You heard it here first. I'm going to double thumbs down to Cody, my friend, my buddy. There's only 2 more shows with you left. Well, 1 more show after this, and it's going to be tough to see you go. It's been fun, that's for sure. So with that, I'm going to turn to Cody.
You're already trying to get me to cry. It's not my last show yet. So, thumbs up to everybody here at SportsZone, obviously. Thumbs down because finals are coming up. Everybody knows that's not fun. Thumbs up for ATV in general, and thumbs down to what Ryan said. Next week is my last and final show. Now just SportsZone. I don't know why I'm tapping the table, but with ATV at large. And this has been my home for the last 4 years since I was a freshman. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard to say goodbye to everybody. I'm not really good with goodbyes. People really know who I am. But we still have time left. Look at me, where are you tearing up? We have time left here at ATV. Make the best of it. And they know no matter where I go, they will always be here as my family. So, David, please.
Wow, that was really deep. I'm not ready for this anymore. I'm going to go a different approach. Thumbs up to Cody for a great 4 years. I've known him for many of them. He's been a wonderful guy, great friend, and I'm excited to see what he can do next. Thumbs up to Chris Boswell for kicking the longest field goal at Heinz Field with 53 yards to win it against the Green Bay Packers in the final seconds. Really made my Sunday nights a lot better. Thumbs up to Shohei Ohtani for sending a list of what he wants from every MLB team to every MLB team. Wow, I'm really struggling today. He provided them a questionnaire asking why he should sign with their team, and hopefully he doesn't go to the Yankees. Really would want him to go to Seattle, follow my favorite Japanese player, Ichiro. I want to say thumbs down to Atlanta Braves organization for messing with international signing bonuses and losing 12 prospects in the process. I hope they all sign with the Orioles, but we don't sign international prospects, so there goes that. I want to give a thumbs up to Thanksgiving. It was my birthday this weekend. Got a lot of turkey and stuffing. Great time for everyone. I want to give a thumbs up to Aviva, even though she's not here. I don't know, because I just want to give her a thumbs up. She probably deserves it for some reason. And looking thumbs down to this week because I have papers, finals, and projects due. So pray for me, please.
All right, so I'm going to give a thumbs up to the San Diego Chargers. This is a team that I really think could be a threat in the playoffs, but they've had some really tough losses towards the end of games, partially because of the kickers and their miscues, but they really destroyed the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I'm going to give a thumbs down to my team, the Miami Dolphins. I was excited for this team. We were 4-2. I even went to the Ravens game up in Baltimore, and we lost 40-0. That was pretty much the beginning of the end, and we haven't won a game since. And we've lost to some pretty terrible teams like the Buccaneers, and that pretty much goes to show you that Jay Cutler is not the answer. So I'm going to go with a thumbs up to the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a team that a lot of us have been doubting whether they can make it back to the finals, but I've always believed in my man LeBron James, and I know he could figure it out for his team, and I believe that he's going to make it to the finals for an 8th straight time. And I'm going to give a thumbs down to the Dallas Cowboys, another team that I enjoy watching. They just haven't looked as good as they were last year when they were the number 1 seed in the NFC, partially because of Elliott's suspension and a few injuries. But besides that, really no excuses for getting obliterated by the Chargers at home and obliterated by the Eagles at home, although they are the best team in the NFL. So hopefully we'll see a better Cowboys season next year.
All right, I'm going to give a thumbs up to the New York Knicks for activating Joakim Noah. Hopefully he'll get a little bit of playing time. I'm a big proponent of just give him some playing time, give him a chance, see what he can do. We haven't seen him play since last season, so just get him in there, see what he can do. If he doesn't do well, fine, but at least you know and you have a good idea of how he's going to do if he continues to get a little bit of playing time. I'm going to give a thumbs up to the St. John's basketball team for starting out the season 6-1. They're doing really well. They have a lot of young talent on that team, and Chris Mullen is really doing an excellent job coaching them. So it's been great to see that. I'll give a thumbs up because Ryan's finally back. He was able to come today. And I'll give a thumbs down that this is Cody's second to last episode. We're really going to miss him. And that's all the thumbs that I have today. Here's Aaron.
So I'll start off by throwing a thumbs down to Kristen's thumbs about Joakim Noah. She seems to have this idea that Joakim Noah is like good, but he's terrible. And we have 3 centers that are better than him currently, so it doesn't really make any sense that he would get any playing time. You know, he's a guy, he's been injured, he's old, he's being paid $18 million a year to seemingly do nothing. If he was a good teammate, like Kristen said, he would restructure his contract so that the Knicks would actually have money to like spend, unlike which they don't have now because they're paying this guy $18 million to just like sit on the bench. So, but thumbs up to Kristen because she's cool, but like that's just a bad opinion in general. Like, and let's see what else. Thumbs up to Thanksgiving. It was really great to be back home, but thumbs down because now it's like finals week next week, and that really sucks. I have a lot of stuff to do. And thumbs down to TDR because I had my first TDR meal since being back, and it was just terrible. My stomach hurts so bad right now, and TDR really need to improve, or else I don't even know. Like I need some good food. Yeah, that's all I have. I'll throw it over to Jessica.
So, I'm going to do a thumbs up to the Seahawks. If they won last week, and hopefully if they can keep that a 4-1 record for the rest of the season, they can make it as a wild card. 3 of those games are at home, and hopefully they're able to do that. Russell Wilson can be amazing in the 4th quarter. I'm going to do a thumbs up to the Seattle Sounders for winning against Houston 2-0. And thumbs down to being back, but thumbs up because the semester is almost over. And yeah, here's Vince.
All right, I'll start off. We'll go thumbs up to the Steelers getting a victory Sunday night over the Green Bay Packers in what had everything making of a trap game. Like Brett Hundley had thrown 2 touchdown passes his entire NFL career up to that point. He threw 3 last night against the Steelers. The Steelers made him look like a superstar like they always do against bad quarterbacks, but Antonio Brown was really there to save the day, and Chris Boswell making amends for his missed extra point early in the game to send all the fans in Heinz Field home happy, so that was good. Thumbs up to Arsenal because they got a result. They got the victory over Burnley, not necessarily even though that they deserved it, but it was good for them to follow up their win against Tottenham, keep momentum going in the league, and take advantage of Tottenham's slip-up. So now they're back in the top 4 again. Maybe that can salvage some momentum with a big week ahead for them. I'll throw a thumbs down. VCU basketball team, men's basketball team, didn't have the best outing at the Jim Maui Invitational in Hawaii over Thanksgiving break, losing to Marquette and losing to Michigan. They were able to beat Cal, but then Cal lost the next day to Chaminade, so that victory literally means nothing. Mike Rhodes and company have a lot of answers. A lot of questions they still need to answer. Justin Tillman's really struggling. Johnny Williams at point guard may not be the best option. They really don't have any size. They can't defend and they can't rebound, so that's really not a good recipe for success at any level of basketball. But I'll go thumbs up to the AU men's basketball. You know, I did a little thing here on SportsZone. I talked smack and I got banged. I said the team was garbage a couple of weeks ago, and then they backed it up with 2 straight wins, looking really good. So I'll eat my words. The men's basketball team doing pretty well. Thumbs up the women's volleyball team. I didn't think I mentioned it last time on Thumbs, which was kind of a glaring error, but they won the Patriot League. They are going to the NCAA tournament again for 5th consecutive year. Barry Goldberg doing what Barry Goldberg does. Also, thumbs up, there were some freshmen at the game last week that had a sign that was Barry Goldberg with a crown on a throne. It was comedic. It was nice to actually see fans that were there. So shout out to those freshmen, making the experience more enjoyable for everyone. I think that is all my thumbs, so I will thank Aaron and David and Daniel and Jessica and Kristen, Cody. I'm not going to say anything this week because Cody's still here next week, and if I say something this week, that's going to acknowledge the fact that next week's his last week. Thank you to Ryan. Aviva was here as well. So from everyone here at ATV, thank you for watching SportsZone.
Talk about the fact that how there's only like 2 weeks left in the semester, and it definitely does not feel like that because everybody's dying in about 30,000 mounds of work. Yep. So let's see, show of hands. Who's got a paper due this week? All right, show of hands. Who's got a presentation this week?
Next week.
Show of hands. Who does not think they will get to Friday alive? However, this is a good way to start the week because this is SportsZone. There's your open. Done.
Wow.
Do you understand how casual that is? It's not
Yeah.
hard.
No, not
right.
hard at all.
Let's do this thing. I can count myself in, unless you want to, you want to go do your floor. You want to go do your floor managing? You want to go do your floor managing and thing? Get. Let's do it. Let's do it. Hello, welcome back to SportsZone. This is our premier AU Insiders segment where we follow the Eagles and their quests to Patriot League glory. Just stop. All right, redo that.
It's getting cheesy.
That was a little too cheesy. All right, here we go. I'm ready. Do you want to do first?
Flip a coin, honestly.
All right, ready? Rock, paper, scissors. You win pros, I win college.
All right, here we go.
Pros.
All right. Glad we came to that decision very logically and just.
That was very democratic. We didn't have a pen, we didn't have a coin, so we decided which segment that we're going to do, even though we're going to do both anyway.